The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain. Apologize for the voice. His Holiness Aram I, Catholicos of the Armenian Apostolic Church of the Holy See of Cilicia. You may pray.
Let us pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We give thanks to you, dear God, for your gift of life. Grant us wisdom, courage, and vision, in order that we may fully dedicate ourselves to the service of the people and the United States of America. Help us, O God, actively engage in meaningful and fruitful deliberation and discussion for the good of our people and prosperity of our country. Help us, God of wisdom, as elected representatives of people, to reflect and act with the profound sense of responsibility and accountability. Help us, God of compassion, to promote mutual understanding, acceptance, and tolerance as one nation of coherent diversities. Help us, giver of peace and justice, to work ardently for peace with justice in a world torn apart by violence and polarizations. Help us, God of mercy, remember in our prayers more than 100,000 Armenian refugees who recently were forced to leave Nagorno-Karabakh, their centuries-old homeland, and face huge difficulties and uncertainties. O God, protect us from evil and strengthen and guide us in our common responsibility. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today we welcome His Holiness Aram I, Catholicos of the Holy See of the Great House of Cilicia, who graced us with an opening prayer. His Holiness Aram I, a true beacon of faith, holds a special place in the hearts of countless Armenians in my community and around the world. His unwavering commitment to the values of faith, community, and compassion embodies the spirit of our vibrant Armenian community. His support for humanitarian issues, advocacy for human rights, engagement in several educational and cultural initiatives, and promotion of interfaith understanding have left an indelible mark, making the world a better place for all. His Holiness Aram I's prayer has not only enriched our proceedings, but also reinforced our commitment to working together in the service of our shared values. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair will entertain up to 5 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand before you today to recognize the men and women who have served our country valiantly. This Saturday, November 11th, we will celebrate Veterans Day, and I wanted to take this time to honor the men and women who have served in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, the Coast Guard, and the Space Force, the National Guard, as well as the reserves. I would also like to recognize the more than 800,000 veterans from my home state of Pennsylvania. We owe a sincere debt of gratitude to all those who have served. Your service, dedication, and your courage is the reason that we are able to live our lives in safety and freedom today. Words cannot describe the level of respect and admiration we have for all of our nation's heroes. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for your service. God bless the military, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentlewoman is recognized without objection for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to pay tribute to Shirley Parker Curry, a passionate civic community leader, a dancer, ballet instructor, and loving friend from Jenkintown, who passed away on October 30th. It is bittersweet and yet beautifully fitting to be honoring Shirley's life in this season of elections, especially this time of year. We miss her wisdom, her work ethic, and that determined twinkle in her eye. Shirley was a lifelong activist, steadfast in her ideals and committed to democracy and good governance. In 1960, Shirley spearheaded support for John F. Kennedy's campaign alongside my mother-in-law, Joan Canan, a group of about a dozen who called themselves the Kennedy Girls. Because of Shirley, the Democratic community has grown large and vibrant. I wouldn't be where I am today if it were not for Shirley asking me over and over, run, Mad, run for something. Many in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania say the same. We are better because of Shirley. Her legacy and the legacy of her beloved husband, Representative Larry Curry, will live on in Jenkintown and Cheltenham. May God bless her family, her children, Jennifer, Jeffrey, Jacqueline, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. God bless you, Shirley Curry. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Address the House for 1 minute and advise and address the House for 1 minute.
Yes. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to celebrate the impact our veterans communities has made on the United States economy. Our nation owes our veterans a debt of gratitude. As a Marine Corps veteran, and I'm proud to lead this resolution with my friend and the VA Committee ranking member, Mark Takano, to designate this week as Veterans Employment Week. The military service provides a unique and valuable experience that equips veterans with a range of skills, qualities that can easily transfer into the workforce. Through their service, veterans learn discipline, leadership, teamwork, problem solving, adaptability, and resilience, among other skills. These skills are highly sought after by employers across various industries and can be leveraged to excel a wide range of careers. Additionally, veterans often bring a strong work ethic and a sense of duty that can contribute to a positive and productive work environment. Hiring veterans not only benefits the individual, but also organizations as a whole. Without veterans, the workforce of America wouldn't be the world leader and innovators and have economic growth. I'm so grateful for the men and women who have served our country and continue to serve and participate in the economy. Thank you. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of the VET PFAS Act, bipartisan legislation that I've introduced to ensure that PFAS-related exposed veterans get the health care benefits that they need through the Veterans Administration. For decades, the Department of Defense has known that toxic PFAS chemicals cause serious health issues. Yet, the VA continues to deny veterans, like Lieutenant Colonel Sauer, coverage for PFAS-related illnesses. Lieutenant Sauer served in the Army for 22 years and was stationed at 10 bases with known PFAS contamination. Now, due to that exposure, he has an uncertain and uncurable form of cancer. Lieutenant Colonel Sauer is sick because of his service to this country, but he has been denied access to care from the VA. When Lieutenant Sauer joined the military, we promised to take care of him when he came home. Right now, we are not making good on that sacred promise. There are thousands of veterans like Lieutenant Colonel Sauer who have been impacted by harmful PFAS chemicals, and that's why I'm calling for us to immediately take up the Vet PFAS Act and keep the promise that we have made to those who put on the uniform of this nation. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, Fox Business reported that Biden repeated his false campaign pledge that he would not raise taxes on Americans making below $400,000. Days afterwards, Tax Commissioner Danny Werfel was hiring 3,700 employees, which is insulting as higher income earners have returns carefully prepared by professional accountants, unlike Hunter Biden's evasions. In direct conflict to Biden, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration said there is no way to identify taxpayers that meet the criteria of $400,000 or more. According to the respected Grover Norquist, president of the Americans for Tax Reform, the findings of the Inspector General blew up the narrative the Democrats are knowingly lying. In conclusion, God bless our troops who successfully protected America for 20 years in the global war on terrorism as it continues moving from the Afghanistan safe haven to America with Biden open borders and an attack here imminent. Congratulations, Byron Thomas, a valued member of the Congressional District Office, for winning a seat on the Casey City Council. We are proud of him, and we know he will serve the public well. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Pennsylvania seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. I rise to commemorate the life and legacy of Mr. Bert Windsor of Emmaus, Pennsylvania. During World War II, Mr. Windsor served with distinction in the legendary Army 1st Special Service Force. When a German artillery attack sent shrapnel within an inch of his heart, he overcame his wounds and returned to the battlefield a mere 10 days later. His grit and courageousness followed him to the Battle of the Bulge, where he held off the German advance during the Siege of Bastogne. For his heroism, Mr. Windsor was awarded a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, and a Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor awarded by Congress. After the war, Mr. Windsor spent more than 30 years working in the automobile industry, including at our own Mack Trucks. He was an active member in his church community and volunteered his time at local schools to share his experiences of the war. Mr. Windsor passed away last month at the age of 101 in the care of his family. Let us remember Mr. Windsor for his remarkable legacy and impact on his community and this country. And let us thank all of our veterans this Veterans Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When Israel came back into existence in 1948, what was the first thing they were greeted by? An attack by their Arab neighbors. Less than 20 years later, 1967 war, Israel had to defend herself again. 6 years later, 1973, yet again, had to defend herself. What is the name of Israel's army? The Israel Defense Force. Defense. What is the Iron Dome system? It's a defense system. The Arrows missiles, a defense system. So what is this all about when we see so much anti-Semitism? We see so many pro-Palestinian protests around the country and on our college campuses coupled with anti-Semitism. What is the core that you're defending when you're standing up for this? You're defending the pro-Hamas movement across the world, which includes in their covenant, in their Hamas covenant of 1988, in Article 7, the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide among the rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there's a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him."
Time has expired.
That is what you're defending. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from California, seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House and advise and extend my remarks for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the beginning of Diwali. Diwali is an anniversary of lights for both Sikhs, Jains, and Hindus here in our country and around the world. It represents times for new beginnings, and what a joyous occasion it is for new beginnings. We certainly reflect upon that. Families will light dozens of candles in their homes and streets to light up the dark night. It reminds us that light always triumphs over darkness, as Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, a follower of Gandhi. It's about good over evil. And I'm proud to join my colleagues in introducing a resolution recognizing the historical and cultural significance of Diwali for all of those who celebrate it throughout the world. May the Festival of Lights inspire us to lift up our communities, live with hope instead of despair, and stand up for what's right. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose, the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor a dear friend of mine, Ron Davis Sr., who passed away on October 17th at the age of 73. Ron grew up in West Knoxville to a great family. He had 6 siblings who all learned a love of nature and the outdoors of East Tennessee from their father. Ron became the first black person to receive a Bachelor of Science degree in forestry from the University of Tennessee. He was very involved with his community and held several positions at the Tennessee Valley Authority. He also co-founded the Minorities and Natural Resources Organization. Ron is survived by his wife, Dr. Maxine Thompson Davis, his daughter Renee, who's a dear friend of mine, his sons Ron and Carrie, his brothers Edward, Stanford, Stephen, and Teddy. Stephen and Teddy, of course, went to Bearden High School. My mama had them in class, and he had 8 wonderful grandchildren. Ron was a good man. He was really a great man, Mr. Speaker. He was always very kind to me, and he will be dearly missed. I miss seeing him all the time at Wright's Cafeteria with him and his wife, and those days will be gone forever. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 1226, an act to amend Title 38 United States Code to allow for the electronic request of certain records and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole, House of the State of the Union, for further consideration of H.R. 4664. Will the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Boss, kindly resume the chair?
The House and the Committee of the Whole, House of the State of the Union, for the further consideration of Bill H.R. 4664, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for financial services and general government for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Wednesday, November 8, 2023, Amendment Number 95, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269, offered by the gentlewoman of Florida, Ms. Salazar, had been disposed of. But it is now in order to consider the Amendment Number 100, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 100, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Ms. Tenney of New York.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847, the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to offer an amendment to reduce the salary of Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, to $1. Mr. Speaker, during Ms. Jean-Pierre's tenure as press secretary, she has repeatedly lied to the American people and acted in a condescending manner toward reporters and also violated the Hatch Act. Just to name a few of her lies, Ms. Jean-Pierre has claimed, 1, illegal immigration is down under the Biden administration. She also claimed nobody is just walking in across the southern border. She also claimed that the 2016 election was stolen. She also claimed that Governor Brian Kemp stole the 2018 governor's race from Stacey Abrams. She also claimed that Biden's stimulus bill did not impact inflation. She also claimed that critical race theory, or its equivalent, isn't being taught in our schools. She also claimed that nobody has done more for the southern border, or our border in general, than Joe Biden. How can somebody with such a history of deceit continue to serve as the liaison for the president and the American people? The American people should not be forced to pay the salary of an individual who dispenses bold-faced lies to the American people while they foot the bill. And Ms. Jean-Pierre has also has a history of anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist rhetoric. For example, she called AIPAC racist and Islamophobic for supporting Israel. She wrote an op-ed that pro-Israel policies and values are not progressive values, which I think many of her Democratic colleagues even would contest. Mr. Speaker, I urge all colleagues to support this common sense amendment to use the Holman Rule to reduce Karine Jean-Pierre's salary, the White House press secretary, to $1, and with that I reserve.
The gentlewoman from New York reserves. The gentleman, for what purpose does the gentleman?
Claim of time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized.
This is another unserious amendment. We've had over 50 of these. Everyone that has been put to a roll call vote has lost. This one will as well, I hope, and I yield. I reserve the balance of my time.
Maryland reserves. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respect the views of the gentleman in opposition. However, the American taxpayers are beleaguered now with inflation, with high costs, with energy costs, and dispensing lies from the White House, our own White House, from the press secretary knowingly is not something that the American people should tolerate or have to pay for, quite honestly. I reserve.
Gentlewoman from New York reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
And this seems to be the substance of the Republican response to all the issues that the gentlelady raises. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, the inflammatory language coming out of Karine Jean-Pierre, in class, she's an election denier. She claimed that the election of 2016 was stolen. She claimed that Stacey Abrams actually beat Governor Brian Kemp in the election of 2018. So an election denier is standing at the podium of the White House, actually dispensing even more misinformation to the American people at their expense. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield and I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting this amendment.
Does gentlewoman yield, or does gentleman reserve? Gentlewoman yields. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
I don't want to prolong this debate, but to hear about election denial from the other side of the aisle is extraordinary and extraordinarily inconsistent with the performance of the former president, who lied regularly. I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New York. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
I ask for roll call.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on this amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New York will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 101. Yes. For what purpose the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
I rise as the designee of the gentleman from Connecticut, and I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the distinguished ranking member of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee, Mr. Cartwright.
Gentleman is recognized.
I thank the ranking member of the FSGG subcommittee. And Mr. Chair, good morning.
Good morning.
Here in Congress, we have a big opportunity to fight drug trafficking in this country. Congress originally authorized the High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program, HIDTA, in 1988 and renewed it in 1993 and 1998. The program provides significant financial assistance to state and local law enforcement and facilitates strong cooperation among those agencies and with federal law enforcement. That cooperation has led to many successes in our efforts to disrupt the market for illegal drugs by interdicting and seizing drugs off of our shores and within our borders. This high-intensity drug trafficking area program removes the supply of illicit substances, making it harder for drug trafficking organizations to sell their products. For example, in 2021, the HIDTA program seized over 193 metric tons of cocaine products, 195 metric tons of methamphetamine, 2,900 metric tons of marijuana, 4 metric tons of heroin, and 9 metric tons of fentanyl. But we all know the toll that the drug trafficking continues to take on communities across our country. Along our southern border, the Mexican cartels are using any means necessary to import precursor chemicals from China to produce synthetic opioids such as fentanyl. That's to meet a growing demand, a demand that has resulted in over 100,000 deaths of Americans in just 1 year. The accessibility, the affordability of these drugs leaves federal, state, local, and tribal partners in a continuous defensive posture to keep dangerous narcotics out of our communities and successfully to combat the drug trafficking networks that are responsible. But still today, we continue to see draconian cuts by the majority to law enforcement efforts, not only in this bill, the FSGG bill, but also in the bill produced by the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee, where I am the ranking member. These cuts serve only to amplify the supply of illicit drugs. These cuts cause a proliferation in the violence associated with the drug trade. These cuts damage the important work of successful programs like HIDTA. Here in Congress, we have the opportunity to build on the investments we have made in the war against drugs. We can provide the HIDTA program with the resources it needs to address its existing and emerging challenges in this war. We can send a clear signal to our adversaries on the global stage that we will not allow this attack on our communities without consequence. We can bring those responsible for the drug trafficking, we can bring this drug trafficking scum to justice. For these reasons, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to the committee. If the House rules permit, I would have offered the motion with an important amendment to the bill. My amendment would increase the Office of National Drug Control Policy's High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas program by $15 million. So at the end of the debate, I will insert into the record the text of this amendment, and I do hope my colleagues will join me in voting for this motion to recommit. I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield back.
Gentleman yield back to the gentleman from Maryland.
I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland yields back. It is now in order to consider Amendment number 101, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 101, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Ms. Tenney of New York.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847, the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, and the member in opposition each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to offer my amendment to prohibit any funding to finalize, implement, or enforce the Federal Acquisition Regulation Council's proposed Federal Acquisition Regulation Disclosure of Greenhouse Emissions and Climate-Related Financial Risk Rule. Mr. Speaker, this disastrous rule proposed by the Federal Acquisition Regulation Council has numerous constitutional, national security, and practical concerns, none of which have been adequately addressed by the Federal Acquisition Regulation Council, otherwise known as FAR, nor has the Council on Environmental Quality done its due diligence, and both agencies have pushed for this rule in spite of lack of due diligence. First and foremost, this rule requires all federal contractors that do business of more than $50 million with the federal government to disclose all Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. This includes everything from emissions produced by the contractor to the emissions produced by mere office supplies that they buy for their employees. We debated the ridiculousness of Scope 3 emissions earlier, but this is simply not practical or helpful to the American people. This rule also seeks to require major federal contractors to comply with the Paris Climate Accords, a flawed deal which has never been ratified by the Senate. But the most objectionable part concerning this rule is the requirement that companies set climate targets and then have them validated by a company called Science-Based Targets Initiative, or SBTI. SBTI is a foreign, and I emphasize, a foreign London-based company which inherently has national security concerns. Under this rule, every major federal contractor, including companies critical to our national security, are required to provide this foreign company with information about all of their Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and then strategize with this foreign company about how to reduce them. Despite the existence of numerous American-based companies that could fill the same role, the FAR Council and CEQ chose a foreign company as the named sole source provider. Why, we query? Because SBTI is nothing but a front for Democratic donors and Democratic advocacy groups. SBTI is owned by the We Mean Business Coalition, which is a project of the New Venture Fund, which is managed by the famous Arabella Advisors. Arabella Advisors, for those who do not know, is the George Soros-funded left-wing advocacy group that funnels dark money to left-wing causes and candidates. To summarize, the Biden administration has named this subsidiary, one of their top donors, left-wing dark money organizations, as the sole source provider for all climate validating for all major federal contractors. During a hearing in the Space Science and Technology Committee on this rule, even the Democrats' witness said that the SBTI was a poor choice for this role, yet the Biden administration continues to forge ahead with this rule anyway. I look forward to continue to work with my colleagues on Space Science and Technology Committee to get the bottom of this rule's suspicious creation, and I continue to urge the committee to subpoena CEQ Chair Brenda Mallory to answer these concerns so the American people know why this is continuing. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and with that I reserve.
The gentlewoman in reserves.
I claim the time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the proposed rule promotes transparency by requiring federal contractors to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions and climate-related financial risk. This transparency enhances accountability and helps the government and the American people make informed decisions regarding its contracts. By addressing climate-related financial risks, the rule encourages businesses to assess and mitigate their exposure to climate-related challenges. This proactive approach is critical in addressing the financial implications of climate change and fosters sustainability. Access to data on greenhouse gas emissions and climate risk enables the government to make more informed procurement decisions. This means selecting contractors who are actively addressing climate change and demonstrating environmental responsibility. For all those reasons, I strongly oppose the adoption of this amendment.
Gentleman reserve. The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Yeah, I appreciate the concerns about making sure that we have a cleaner climate. However, the gentleman doesn't talk about this obvious issue with Arabella Advisors. Everyone knows this is a dark money group that funds entities that actually fund donors and is part of the donor class of the Democratic Party, which is put in a unique position to actually control how we actually manage climate and how we deal with these issues with federal contractors. And I cited in my initial remarks, this also includes security issues. These are companies that are now going to have to confer with suspect foreign entities to talk about these issues and share information. This is a dangerous precedent. Not only is it a Democratic donor issue, but it's also which is politically charged and shouldn't be allowed in our rulemaking process or in our governmental process, but it is also a threat to our security. And I think for those reasons, I urge all my colleagues to support this rule. It is a common sense rule, and it's something that they would certainly object to if the Republicans had proposed their major donor base to be in this position on the federal level, and certainly as part of the federal bureaucracy in such a critical role. With that, I reserve.
The gentlewoman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I will not characterize as right or left wing, but what the gentlelady does not talk about, of course, is the donor base of the Republican Party and the interest that exists that do not want this transparency. I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
With all due respect, this is a mandatory rule that requires every federal contractor doing business over $50 million a year to use this company, a foreign-based company, not an American company, not a company with where we can actually have oversight over it using our rules.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
With that, I yield. Thank you.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New York. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on this amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New York will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 102, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269. For what purpose, the gentlewoman from Missouri seek it recognition?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 102, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Mrs. Wagner of Missouri.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847, the gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Wagner, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Missouri.
Mr. Chair, I rise today to prevent the Financial Stability Oversight Council, FSOC, from making it easier to designate non-bank financial companies as a systemically important financial institution, or SIFI. The 2008 financial crisis was a result of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's poor government housing policies that bilked taxpayers out of billions of dollars, and the inability of financial regulators to properly identify systemic risk and take action until it was too late. As a response to the crisis, Congress passed the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. Democrats' law has dramatically reduced competition in the banking sector, imposed barriers to entry for new banks, and saddled financial institutions with a mountain of new requirements that hit small, mid-sized, and regional banks particularly hard. Under Dodd-Frank, FSOC has the power to designate companies as a SIFI and therefore subject to Federal Reserve supervision and enhanced prudential standards. In other words, too big to fail. Last week, FSOC finalized guidance that would allow it to apply the same too big to fail burdens to non-bank financial institutions, such as asset managers or broker-dealers, insurance companies, and private funds. It has been reported that the annual consumer cost of designating a non-bank financial institution as a SIFI could range from $5 to $8 billion. Yet, FSOC's new guidance fails to require any cost-benefit analysis when making such a designation. Let me repeat that one more time. These designations would cost consumers, American taxpayers, $5 to $8 billion per year. This guidance put forth by the Biden administration rescinds the 2019 changes that rightfully moved FSOC's authority from an entities-based approach to an activities-based approach in determining whether a non-bank entity should be deemed a SIFI. To grant such unfettered discretionary power to a government agency should concern every American, particularly when the body exercising that power, FSOC, is composed almost entirely of members of a single political party. I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment that reins in our regulators, restores Congress's Article 1 powers, and saves Main Street investors billions of dollars. I reserve my time.
Gentlewoman from Missouri reserves. For what purpose the gentleman from Maryland?
Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized.
I have great respect for my friend from Missouri, and it seems to me that this is a very serious matter. She's raised issues, but it's also my belief that it ought to be considered in the context of the Financial Services Committee and legislation propounded and offered to this House for the careful consideration that the assertions that the gentlelady makes, they're serious assertions, and we ought to have the time to debate and fully understand the ramifications of the actions that the lady speaks of. However, in the context of this bill, we don't have the opportunity to really make that kind of assertion or analysis. The authority granted to the Financial Stability Oversight Council, FSOC, to require supervision and regulation of certain non-bank financial companies helps mitigate systemic risks in the financial system. I was here in 2008. We saw that. We saw it at great cost to the economy and to individuals. By identifying and regulating systemically important non-bank entities, FSOC can prevent potential destabilizing events that could harm the broader economy. The 2008 financial crisis highlighted, Mr. Chairman, the need to monitor and regulate non-bank financial firms that can pose, however, very significant risk. The FSOC's authority fosters a coordinated regulatory approach, ensuring that non-bank financial companies are subject to appropriate oversight without duplicating efforts across different regulatory agencies. For that reason, and this may well be something that ought to be subject for greater discussion by the Committee of Jurisdiction and Expertise, I strongly oppose the amendment and urge a no vote.
Gentleman reserve?
I reserve.
Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentlewoman from Missouri is recognized.
I thank the chairman and I thank the gentleman for his consideration of the amendment. I would like to express that we have, in fact, held a hearing in the Financial Services Committee about this very issue and some of the costs that I'm talking about, the $5 to $8 billion to our taxpayers that this would cost to implement, was a part of that discussion within the Financial Services Committee and came from testimony directly therewith. So I would repeat again that these designations would cost consumers, American taxpayers, $5 to $8 billion per year, and I'd urge my colleagues to support this amendment, to reins in our regulators, restores Congress's Article 1 powers, and saves our Main Street investors from billions and billions of dollars. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Missouri reserves. Gentleman from Maryland.
Again, I thank the gentlelady for her observations and concern, because obviously the conclusion that she makes would be of concern to all of us. I simply suggest that this is not the proper place for us to give the analysis and assess the correctness of the assertion that has been made in terms of cost. However, we do know, we have experienced dealing with non-banks, or the failure to deal with non-banks, cost this economy one of its deepest recessions since I've been in the Congress of the United States. And therefore, I think at this juncture, this amendment ought to be rejected, and that the gentlelady, who is, I think, a member of the Financial Services Committee, pursue this. And it sounds to me, if in fact her assertion is correct, and I have no reason to believe it one way or the other because I just don't know, then I would think a bipartisan bill ought to be brought to the floor and ought to be considered. But in terms of the amendment, I urge its defeat. And I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back. The gentlewoman from Missouri is recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank my friend across the aisle for his consideration and his kind words. I would just simply urge my colleagues to support this amendment that would rein in our regulators, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back, and the question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Missouri. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The chair understands that the amendment number 103 will not be offered. It is now in order to consider amendment number 104, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 104, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Mr. Williams of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 847, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you. I rise today in full support of my amendment to H.R. 4664. Congress alone has the ability to authorize new programs. Unfortunately, this past year we saw the SBA get around this basic fact and effectively made a pilot program permanent through the rulemaking process. Now, this is unacceptable, and this amendment makes it clear that the agency must respect the rule of law and not skirt congressional authority. This amendment would prevent the SBA from creating any new lending programs. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the SBA took an outsized role in the economy. Unfortunately, the after-action reports and in the SBA's track record was awful, horrible. SBA's Inspector General estimates that over $200 to $600 billion of American taxpayer dollars from pandemic lending was lost to fraud. Think about how large that number is. The entire FSGG bill we are debating today has a top-line appropriation number of $25 billion. Now, this agency alone had almost 10 times this amount of fraud flow through the agency. And where did it go? Well, we know it went to people that phonied up their Social Security numbers. We know it went to people that said they were somebody when they weren't. We also know it went to foreign nationals. Now, in the private sector, where I come from, something with such a poor track record would be shut down, not given additional responsibilities. And this amendment would stop any additional attempts for the SBA to simply decide they can take on more lending activities. On the Committee on Small Business, we have worked to hold the SBA accountable for its shortcomings and to increase transparency. With many rule changes imposed by the SBA just this year, my amendment is a common-sense approach that continues to build on the committee's mission to restore and preserve the integrity of the agency. Look at here. The SBA should focus on their core mission, which is helping entrepreneurs, helping Main Street America, helping capitalism, and what this economy is all about. So let's get them back on that mission to where we can get our economy going and small business can rely on what the SBA says and does. So thank you, and I reserve.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland, for what purpose does he seek?
I claim time in opposition, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the gentleman indicates that he came from the private sector. I'm sure he was very successful in the private sector as he's been in public life. In the private sector, one of the things that we admire is their ability to innovate. the ability to adjust, the ability to make changes when those are demanded by the marketplace. This amendment undermines the ability of the Small Business Administration to do exactly that, to innovate and reach more small businesses by taking away the agency's pilot loan authority. Pilot loan authority, essentially, again, the gentleman is the chairman of the committee and knows better than I, but pilot loan authority is the flexibility to assess the market, assess the need, and take action. If they don't have that authority, and as some have argued in numerous amendments here, the Congress ought to take that responsibility. Congress is not taking responsibility very well, Mr. Chairman. We're not doing things we ought to do, and if the private sector or the SBA was as inefficient, ineffective as the Congress of the United States, we'd shut it down. But of course, we can't shut down the Congress. We just can lament the fact that we can't do our work, that we don't respond in a timely fashion. I'm particularly concerned about Ukraine under assault by a despotic power who needs resources from the United States. And by the way, I read a report today that the United States is not the biggest contributor to Ukraine. We are certainly the major partner. The EU and others, including Japan, are the major partners because they want to defend freedom. I'm concerned about the fact that we haven't acted to send a message to Putin, to Iran, to other despots that we will not shrink from the responsibility of defending freedom here and around the world. This authority, in a microcosm, is to try to give the SBA the opportunity to respond in timely and effective fashions to opportunities that it sees on behalf of small businesses. Pilot 7A loans are provided by SBA to address the development of a specific sector or geographical region based on the agency's identified needs. And we can shut everybody down in government. And unfortunately, frankly, government's very risk adverse. Not as nimble as the private sector. Why? Because the administrators of all these agencies know that they've got us looking over their shoulder, and if they make a slight mistake, they have an amendment, or they have a hearing, or they have some congressman or congresswoman who says, aha, gotcha. Now, if the private sector had that, it would be immobilized. It wouldn't happen, because in the private sector, we understand that mistakes happen because you're taking risks. And by definition, risks sometimes result in not succeeding, or they wouldn't be a risk. So when we have an amendment like this, and we've had a number of amendments like this, and concerns expressed, I get that. But it seems to me in this instance, when my friend starts with saying he's in the private sector, I welcome his experience. It's critically important. We are the most successful economy on earth because we allow people to take risk. By definition, some fail. Apparently, not apparently, but obviously, most fail, as a matter of fact. But some are extraordinarily successful because they took that risk. Now, what needs to happen, of course, in the course of risking, is when you find a failure, you stop it.
Gentleman's time is expired.
So I urge that we reject this amendment because it precludes the SBA from taking chances when they are available and can be successful.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Well, I would just like to say that I have a hard time relating this bill to Ukraine and Putin, which we just heard of. Risk and reward is a great thing. It made America great, where you could take risk and get reward. We find ourselves trying to fight for that all the time, but this merely is taken. The SBA is needed for Main Street America. It is needed for small business, but it needs to be fluid. It needs to be capitalized properly. The SBA has misplaced $200 billion, as the auditor has said. We need to find that. The SBA does not need to be getting bigger right now. It actually needs to be getting smaller. Let's get this $200 billion, let's put it back in the economy so Main Street America can take advantage of it. So that's why this bill is important. With that being said, I think we have no other members to speak, and I'm prepared to close.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, as I said, I think this bill is important. I think it's going to actually help the SBA. It needs to be passed. The SBA is a great agency when it's cooking on all cylinders, but it's not doing that right now. Let's get them back in line. Let's get them to a size that they can compete with and help Main Street America and get our economy going again. I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in Part B on House Report 118-269, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 100 by Ms. Tenney of New York. Amendment number 101 by Ms. Tenney of New York. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendments number 100, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269 by the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 100, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Ms. Tenney of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request of a recorded vote will rise to be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 165, the nays are 257 with one voting present. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 101, printed in Part B of House Report 118-269 by the gentlewoman from New York, Miss Tenney, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the yeas prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 101, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-269, offered by Ms. Tenney of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 202. The amendment is adopted. There being no further amendment pursuant to the rule, the committee rises. Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 4664 and pursuant to House Resolution 847. I report the bill as amended by that resolution back to the House with a further amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 4664 and pursuant to House Resolution 847 reports the bill as amended by that resolution back to the House with sundry further amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. The House will be in order. The House will come to order. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of H.R. 4664 is postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet on Monday, November 13th, 2023, when it shall convene at noon for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that I may hereafter be considered as the first sponsor of H.R. 822, the Student Mental Health Helpline Act, a bill originally introduced by Representative Chris Stewart of Utah for the purpose of adding co-sponsors and requesting reprintings pursuant to Clause 7 of Rule 12.
Objection.
Thank you.
I'll order it. The House will come to order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members are advised to take your conversations off the floor. Members are also asked to clear the well. Who's going to go up first? The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. The House will be in order. For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I seek recognition to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows. Impeaching Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolved that Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Rather than adhering to an oath he took to defend and secure our country and uphold the Constitution when he was sworn in as Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas has engaged in a pattern of conduct that is incompatible with the laws of the United States as follows. Article 2 of the Constitution requires that the executive branch, which today includes the Secretary of Homeland Security, ensures the laws passed by Congress and signed into law by the President are faithfully executed. The Secure Fence Act of 2006, Public Law 109 through 367, requires that the Secretary of Homeland Security maintain operational control over the entire international land and maritime borders of the United States. In his willful admittance of border crossers, terrorists, human traffickers, drugs, and other contraband, Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas has failed to maintain operational control of the border, thereby violating the Secure Fence Act of 2006. The guarantee clause set forth in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution dictates, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. And on application of this legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. The guarantee clause clearly dictates that the federal government has a constitutional duty and obligation to protect each of the states from invasion. Mr. Speaker, could you call the House to order, please?
The House will be in order. Members are advised to take their conversations off the floor. The gentleman will continue.
As Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas has violated his oath to uphold this constitutional duty by allowing the invasion of approximately 10 million illegals across our borders. The ongoing invasion at our southern border is a direct national security threat against the states and against the citizens therein. Secretary Mayorkas has willfully abandoned his duty to secure the border and protect states against invasion, thereby violating Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. To wit, since Mayorkas has headed the Department of Homeland Security, there have been approximately 10 million illegal border crossers who have invaded our country at our border. This is broken down between 8 million encounters and approximately 1,800 known gotaways who have evaded United States authorities and are roaming the interior of the United States. At least 280 people on terrorist watch lists caught while attempting to cross the border between ports of entry. Approximately 400,000 unaccompanied illegal children encountered at the southern border, with at least 85,000 of these children having gone missing. At least 1,424 deaths of illegals at the southern border. Approximately 73,000 special interest aliens arrested at our border, which are aliens from a nation that promotes terrorist activity, harbors terrorists, or poses a security threat to the United States. This is the number arrested at the border, not counting, however, many of the 1,800,000 known gotaways are special interest aliens. Approximately 659 special interest aliens from Iran, approximately 6,386 special interest aliens from Afghanistan, approximately 538 special interest aliens from Syria, approximately 3,153 special interest aliens from Egypt, approximately 12,624 special interest aliens from Uzbekistan, approximately 30,830 special interest aliens from Turkey, approximately 1,613 special interest aliens from Pakistan, approximately 164 special interest aliens from Lebanon, approximately 184 special interest aliens from Jordan, approximately 123 special interest aliens from Iraq, and approximately 15,594 special interest aliens from Mauritania. In fiscal year 2021, Customs and Border Patrol seized approximately 11,200 pounds of fentanyl. In fiscal year 2022, CBP seized approximately 14,700 pounds of fentanyl. In fiscal year 2023, CBP has seized a record of approximately 27,000 pounds of fentanyl. Over 70,000 Americans died from fentanyl in fiscal year 2022. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. Fentanyl kills approximately 300 Americans every day. This is the amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the border. Yet, 300 Americans are still being killed by fentanyl poisoning every day. The amount of unseized fentanyl has not even been taken into account. The Constitution also requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to observe the Immigration and Nationality Act, 8 U.S.C. 1101. This law requires Homeland Security to detain inadmissible aliens arriving in the United States or illegal aliens presently in the United States. Instead, the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Mayorkas has practiced catch and release policies whereby illegals are detained but then released without any mechanism to ensure they show up to court for processing. By terminating contracts for border wall construction, ending the migrant protection protocols, which is Remain in Mexico, unlawfully granting categorical parole, and being complicit in ending Title 42, Mayorkas has made it easier for illegal people and drugs to enter the United States, endangering American citizens, and has made it harder for CBP to expel such threats. Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas, in his inability to enforce the law, has engaged in a pattern of conduct that is incompatible with his duties as a civil officer of the United States. Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas, in his failure to uphold the oath he took, has, by his actions, lost the trust of the citizens of the United States to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. Wherefore, Alejandro Nicholas Mayorkas thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Mr. Speaker, I yield.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered from the floor by a member other than the majority leader or the minority leader as a question of the privileges of the House has immediate precedence only at a time designated by the chair within 2 legislative days after the resolution is properly noticed. Pending that designation, the form of the resolution noticed by the gentlewoman from Georgia will appear in the record at this point. The chair will not at this point determine whether the resolution constitutes a question of privilege. That determination will be made at the time designated for consideration of the resolution. 1-minute speeches. For what purposes does the gentleman from Guam seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in honor of Veterans Day on Friday, I rise to recognize the brave men and women who have protected and served our country courageously. This is an especially significant day for my district, the island of Guam, as it is home for over 15,000 military veterans. We are also proud to hold the highest per capita statistics of enlistment numbers in the nation. To our veterans, I pledge to continue pushing for legislation that provides better benefits and services for you all. I will continue honoring your legacy by supporting those who have served and to ensure Guam's defense is strong and resilient as tensions rise in the Indo-Pacific region. Today and every day, we honor you and your families for the sacrifices that have made our freedom possible. Your courage, patriotism, and dedication are an inspiration for us all. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to praise the Democratic Party for putting people over politics. Every day, House Democrats fight to better the lives of working Americans. We are ready to support common sense legislation to keep the government open and provide vital services to the American people. We continue to bring down inflation and lower costs for food, medicine, and other necessities. We invest in American families with bills to help them with child care and home energy costs. We support our friends overseas with bills to provide aid to innocent Palestinian civilians, Ukraine, and Israel. And we work daily to make our country work for all Americans. We are committed to voting rights for all Americans. We are committed to reproductive rights for all women. And we want an America with equality for all and prejudice towards none. That is why I am proud to be a Democrat. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the Gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor our nation's veterans. This Veterans Day, we recognize those who have selflessly served our nation, as well as to honor the sacrifices they have made so that we can live in freedom in the greatest country on earth. Our veterans, those living and those who have gone before us, represent our nation's finest heroes. These men and women answered the call of duty to defend our country, preserve our peace, and protect our precious freedoms. Their valor, love of country, and unwavering commitment has ensured all Americans continue to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. On Veterans Day and every day, may we recognize our nation's champions of liberty and honor their service by safeguarding our freedoms in the future. President Ronald Reagan once said, and I quote, "Veterans know better than anyone else the price of freedom, for they've suffered the scars of war. We can offer them no better tribute than to protect what they have won for us. That is our duty. They have never let America down, and we will not let America down either." This Veterans Day, may God bless our veterans and their families, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise in recognition of Veterans Day to honor the brave souls from the Virgin Islands and throughout the nation for their selfless and valiant service. In the Virgin Islands, our veteran spirit of service is a beacon of inspiration. Yet the very liberties they fight tirelessly for are mirrored by the injustices they confront upon returning home, the inequitable access to health care and benefits they deserve. This disparity is more than an oversight. It's an egregious mistreatment of our nation's heroes and has been a driving force for my relentless advocacy to rectify the wrong. That's why last year I supported the Landmark PACT Act, guaranteeing veterans harmed by burn pits or other toxins to receive automatic VA health care and benefits. I'm proud for the successful advocacy for an amendment requiring the GAO to study the state of access and barriers and benefits to veterans living in the territories. We owe our veterans more than gratitude. We owe them action. It's time to deliver on our promise. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House floor for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for the first time in over 3 years, California is drought-free. This year's rainfall has helped to replenish depleted groundwater, reservoirs, but we've missed an opportunity to capture and store more of this valuable resource. Since October of 2022, over 28 million acre-feet of water has been sent to the ocean, enough surface supply to sustain our agriculture producers for an entire year. We can and must do better so our communities are prepared for both dry and wet years. Last week, the House passed my bill, the Water for California Act, as part of the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. This bill makes additional funding available for raising Shasta Dam, extends authorization for successful water storage project programs, and established by the WIN Act, and codifies the 2019 biological opinions. These actions aim to provide a clean, reliable water supply to our communities and farmers who grow a quarter of the country's food. If California water problems continue to go unaddressed, the entire nation's food supply is at risk. I urge the Senate to keep these provisions in the bill and get this bill across the finish line. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I'm thrilled to introduce to the American people Lady Pirate Marissa, Pirate Nation's latest sensation. Not just any pirate, mind you. She's the first female live pirate mascot at East Carolina University. Pirate Marissa's presence has helped to enhance the game day experience by helping to pump up the crowd and keep everyone excited. I believe Pirate Marissa will provide Pirate Steve with all our university needs to win every sword fight. Pirate Marissa, not only do you make your daughters Rachel, Raylan, and Riley proud, you make us all proud. A big shout out to the East Carolina University Marketing Department. Thanks for keeping the passion and excitement alive at Pirate Nation and honoring the rich legacy of our official mascot, Petey the Pirate. People love pirates. No quarter. Go Pirates. Arr! I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise to honor an extraordinary Vietnam veteran from Chemung County, Larry Sherman. After America entered the Vietnam War, Larry Sherman answered the call to serve his fellow Americans and enlisted in the United States Navy. Shortly after he completed training, he deployed to Vietnam to join the Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 10, the Seabees. He spent his deployment supporting our military in building critical infrastructure under fire, often dodging mortars and rockets. When Larry returned home, he received that same harsh treatment that many Vietnam veterans faced, and he decided to take action. Larry has been a leader in local initiatives to support his fellow veterans. He now serves as the president of Vietnam Veterans Association Chapter 803 and leads the Chemung County Honor Guard, which provides ceremonial military presence at the funerals of veterans and other important events. Thank you, Larry, for your courage and your service, and for going the extra mile to support veterans across the southern tier. And I yield back, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House floor for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise ahead of Veterans Day to honor the incredible life and sacrifice of an amazing veteran from West Michigan who gave his life in service to our nation, Force Specialist Lloyd Slack. Earlier this year, I had the honor of hosting a ceremony in his honor at the brand new Veterans Home in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Lloyd Slack paid the ultimate sacrifice while serving in Vietnam, drawing enemy fire upon himself and thereby saving his team. My team learned that Lloyd's mother, 96-year-old Lola Mundy, a Gold Star mother, never received the medals that he was due. We got right to work, making sure she could see those medals and receive the commemoration of her son's service before she died. Miss Mundy turned unimaginable loss into purpose, serving other Gold Star families living with her while also living with her own grief. Presenting these medals to her in the ceremony was the honor of my time in Congress. Our military families sacrifice so much. And on this Veterans Day, I give my thanks to West Michiganders who have served and their families. We are the home of the free because of the brave. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in remembrance of Police Corporal Doug Twin Heron. Corporal Heron recently passed away after experiencing an unspecified medical emergency while working an off-duty assignment. He was hired at the Savannah Police Department in January of 1988 and was promoted to corporal in 1994, and in 2002 he was promoted to star corporal. For the last 2 years of his life, he worked at the Savannah Impact Program, which focuses on at-risk youth and adults. His dedication to this program is a true testament to the man that he was. Corporal Heron always put the community first. He dedicated his career in policing to bettering the lives of others. Corporal Heron was a hero, and the entire Savannah community will never forget the good that he did. I would like to extend my deepest condolences to his family. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House floor for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Bill Thies from Jackson Township in Ohio's 13th Congressional District. Bill was recently named Stark County's 2023 Military Veteran of the Year by the Greater Canton Veterans Council. As we head into Veterans Day, I am honored to celebrate Bill as one of our community's selfless, brave heroes that has served our nation. For Bill, service to our nation and protecting democracy is a family tradition. 2 of his brothers and his father also served our nation. 57 years ago, Bill received his military draft notice, going on to serve 2 tours overseas in the Vietnam War as an officer in the United States Army from 1966 to 1970. Now, Bill is a leader in the Stark County veteran community where he volunteers to plan social events and works to assist homeless veterans. Serving our nation is an enormous sacrifice, but for Bill, his service didn't end with his military career. I thank Bill for his lifetime of service to our country, to protecting our freedoms, and I congratulate him on being Stark County's Military Veteran of the Year. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to thank and honor the brave men and women who have served our country's military. As we approach Veterans Day, I would like to especially recognize the more than 800,000 veterans who call Pennsylvania home, including the 56,000 who reside in my district, Pennsylvania's 9th. Pennsylvania's 9th is also home to the Army and Air Force National Guards at Fort Indiantown Gap. Throughout our history, our forefathers, forebears, family members have put service above self in defense of our freedoms. They have fought to preserve our republic, to promote righteousness, and to protect our homeland. And when fighting overseas, the only land we asked for was enough to bury our dead. Our veterans fought for us. It is now our duty here in this House to work for them. Since coming to Congress, we've enacted legislation like the PACT Act, the Blue Water Navy Act, and more, all aimed at expanding veterans' benefits and ensuring veterans receive the medical care they have earned. This weekend, let's honor those who have served as we celebrate Veterans Day. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we approach Veterans Day, I rise to honor the memory of Philip Ayala Sr., who passed away just over a year ago. Phil, as his family and friends called him, was a beloved neighbor in Berwyn, Illinois. When he was just 17 years old, Phil enlisted in the U.S. Army and honorably served our country in Vietnam. Phil kept our community safe as a Cook County deputy sheriff and fought to make the police force more diverse through his work with Congressman Ralph Metcalf and the Concerned Citizens for Police Reform. Phil co-founded El Centro de la Causa, an agency that worked with Mexican-American youth and Spanish-speaking population in the 1970s. In his 3 decades at El Centro, Phil provided support and built the infrastructure that led to the founding of so many other organizations in the community. For Phil, the ultimate goal was to give back to the community, whether it was meeting with President Carter at the White House alongside Latino leaders, or serving as a member of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, or through his work in our neighborhoods. Phil fulfilled the goal with every fiber in his being. Thank you for your service, Phil. May you rest in peace.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I request permission to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the Brevard High School volleyball team for winning the 2A volleyball state championship for North Carolina for the first time in their school's history. The Brevard Blue Devils dominated Saturday's championship game in a 3-0 win against Camden County High School. As a former high school athlete myself, I recognize the sacrifices and dedication that go into making this type of victory happen. Senior and star middle hitter Malia Foster, with her numerous kills and blocks, was named MVP of the state finals. The Blue Devils have outstanding individual players, but what sets them apart is their unity as a team. Each and every member contributed to this historic victory. Congratulations, Blue Devils. I wish all you the very best in your future endeavors and encourage you to continue to strive for excellence on and off the court. You've made Western North Carolina proud. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to mourn the loss of Ruth Levine, who passed away at the age of 103. Ruth was born in Hamburg, Germany, but immigrated to Los Angeles as the Nazi Party was rising to power in the 1930s. Ruth became a lifelong Trojan, receiving both her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Southern California. She was one of only 5 female students in her USC Law School class. She and her husband, Dick, married in 1944, spending 50 wonderful years together. Ruth enjoyed an active role in her children's lives and maintained involvement in the Women's Lawyers Association of Los Angeles, the LA County Bar Association, and Jewish Family Service of Los Angeles. She established a scholarship in her husband's memory to help students at USC Law School, just one of her many philanthropic efforts for her alma mater in the heart of our district, the 37th. She is survived by her children, Kathy and Raymond, her 3 grandchildren, and her 6 great-grandchildren. I hope you will join me in mourning the loss of Ruth Levine and celebrate her life of full love and learning. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
My turn. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition?
I rise to address the House floor for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Virginia Beach Sheriff Ken Stolle, who recently retired after an incredibly successful 43-year career in public service. During his 13-year tenure as sheriff, Ken Stolle brought about numerous positive changes for our local law enforcement officers and our community, including creating a successful transition program for inmates at the end of their sentences, implementing body cameras for all of Virginia Beach Sheriff's deputies, and establishing successful mental health programs for those serving time in the prison system. Stolle was often quoted as saying he ran the largest mental health facility in Hampton Roads, and his emphasis on this issue led to policies that have been a blueprint for agencies across the country. Before serving as sheriff of Virginia Beach, Ken worked for the Virginia Beach Police Department, practiced law in Hampton Roads, represented Virginia Beach in the Virginia State Senate, and served our great nation as a United States Naval Reservist. Sheriff Stolle, thank you for your many years of service to our community, our Commonwealth, and our country. Best of luck in retirement. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate 3 decades of faithful leadership from New Orleans minister Bishop Darrell S. Brister. Bishop Brister's life is a story of dedication and purpose. His commitment to his faith led him to leadership in the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International, becoming second presiding bishop in 1996 at the tender age of 29 years old. Bishop Brister's impact extends far beyond his church walls. He has taken the word of God around the world, from Japan to Africa. He has also founded nonprofit organizations, including DSB International Ministries, which provides spiritual guidance to those incarcerated, and the Darrell S. Brister Scholarship Fund, which supports students' educational aspirations. Bishop Brister's commitment to his calling remains steadfast. He continues to inspire, guide, and support his community, living a life that is dedicated to serving God and those around him. It is an honor to celebrate Bishop Brister's 30 years of spiritual leadership. May he continue to shine as a spiritual light for all those he touches. Thank you, Bishop Brister, for your extraordinary friendship, service, and commitment to the community, and your unwavering commitment to spreading the word of God. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from Oklahoma is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to say goodbye to Ava Forrester, one of the last World War II Rosie the Riveters. Ava worked on the left wing of the C-47 cargo transport aircraft in Oklahoma City. I had the tremendous honor of meeting Ava on her 101st birthday this last April. She was optimistic about life, willing to try anything, and funny too. It is imperative that we remember the legacies of women like Ava, who stepped up to serve our country in a time of need. Their work allowed the American war effort to be successful and powered an unprecedented age of American ingenuity. It seems only fitting that as we approach Veterans Day, I have the blessing to recognize Mrs. Forrester. Rest in peace, Ava. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I'd like to ask to speak 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
I'd like one more time to remind the press corps that sometime, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps sometime next week, they will release the new numbers of people coming across our southern border, what we sometimes refer to as illegal aliens. It is a story the press should never get tired of reporting, but apparently there are. Remind them that every month lately, 230,000 people cross their border, about 11 times the number of people who were crossing the border just 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. Of those, 70,000 are gotaways, which means they don't even go through the perfunctory checking in that you do if you ask for asylum. About 9,000 are unaccompanied minors. It seems to me about 5 years ago we were screaming bloody murder about families being torn apart when people were held apart from their parents who were breaking the law for just a couple of weeks. Here we have 9,000 people who are permanently coming across the border without their parents, and apparently we don't even care. Indeed, the Biden administration has stopped asking for DNA tests to sometimes see if they're related. We are told by the Border Patrol that the people coming across are more aggressive than they have been in the past. No issue is more important than this. If the press corps is on the ball in this country, we should be reporting every day, every week, the number of people coming across the border as well as the countries they're coming across from. Thank you very much.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
The House now adjourns.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until noon on Monday next for morning hour debate.